Chapter 4. An Evening in Uncle Tom's Cabin. The cabin of Uncle Tom was a small log building close adjoining to the house, as the Negro par excellence designates his master's dwelling. In front it had a neat garden patch where every summer strawberries, raspberries, and a variety of fruits and vegetables flourished under careful tending. The whole front of it was covered by a large scarlet magnolia and a native multiflora rose, which in twisting and interlacing left scarce a vestige of the rough logs to be seen. Here also in summer various brilliant annuals such as marigolds, petunias, 4 o'clocks, found an indulgent corner in which to unfold their splendors. And here the delight and pride of Aunt Chloe's heart. Let us enter the dwelling. The evening meal at the house is over, and Aunt Chloe, who presided over its preparations as head cook, has left to inferior officers in the kitchen the businesses of cleaning away and washing dishes, and come out into her own snug territories to get her old man's supper. Therefore doubt not that it is her you see by the fire presiding with anxious interest over certain frizzling items in a stew-pan, and anon with grave consideration lifting the cover of a baked kettle, from whence steam forth indubitable intimations of something good. A round black shining face is hers, so glossy as to suggest the idea that she might have been washed over with white of eggs, like one of her own tea-rugs. Her whole plump countenance beams with satisfaction and contentment from under her well-starched check turban bearing on it. However, if we must confess it, a little bit of that tinge of self-consciousness which becomes the first cook of a neighborhood, as Aunt Chloe was universally held and knowledgeable to be. A cook she certainly was in the very bone and center of her soul. Not a chicken or turkey or duck in the barnyard but looked grave when they saw her approaching, and seemed evidently to be reflecting on their latter end. And certainly it was that she was always meditating on trust, stuffing and roasting to a degree that was calculated to inspire terror in any reflecting fowl living. Her corn cake and all its varieties of hoe cake, dodgers, muffins, and other species too numerous to mention, was a sublime mystery to all less practised compounders. And she would shake her fat sides with honest pride and merriment, as she would narrate the fruitless efforts that one and another of her compeers had made to attain to her elevation. The arrival of company at the house, the arranging of dinners and suppers in style, awoke all the energies of her soul, and no sight was more welcome to her than a pile of traveling trunks launched on the veranda, for then she foresaw fresh efforts and fresh triumphs. Just at present, however, Aunt Chloe is looking into the bake-pan, in which conjugal operation we shall leave her till we finish our picture of the cottage. In one corner of it stood a bed, covered neatly with a snowy spread, and by the side of it was a piece of carpeting of some considerable size. On this piece of carpeting Aunt Chloe took her stand as being decidedly in the upper walks of life, and it and the bath by which it lay in the whole corner in fact were treated with distinguished consideration, and made so far as possible sacred from the marauding inroads and desecrations of little folks. In fact, that corner was the drawing-room of the establishment. In the other corner was a bed of much humbler pretensions and evidently designated for use. The wall over the fireplace was adorned with some very brilliant scriptural prints, and a portrait of General Washington, drawn and colored in a manner which would certainly have astonished that hero, if ever he had happened to meet with its like. On a rough bench in the corner a couple of holy-headed boys, with a glistening black eyes and fat shining cheeks, were busy in superintending the first walking operations of the baby, which, as is usually the case, consisted in getting up on its feet, balancing a moment, and then tumbling down, each successive failure being violently cheered as something decidedly clever. A table somewhat rheumatic in its limbs was drawn out in front of a fire, and covered with a cloth displaying cups and saucers of a decidedly brilliant pattern, with other symptoms of approaching meal. At this table is seated Uncle Tom, Mr. Shelby's best friend, who he is to be the hero of our story. He was a large, broad-chested, powerfully made man, of a fully glossy black and a face whose truly African features were characterized by an expression of grave and steady good sense, united with much kindness and benevolence. There was something about his whole air self-respecting and dignified, yet united with a confiding and humble simplicity. He was very busily intent at this moment on a slate lying before him, on which he was carefully and slow endeavoring to accomplish a copy of some letters, in which operation he was overlooked by young Master George, a smart, bright boy of 13, who appeared fully to realize the dignity of his position as instructor. "Now that way, Uncle Tom, not that way," said he briskly, as Uncle Tom laboriously brought up the tail of a G, the wrong side out. "That makes a Q, you see." "Less snakes now, does it?" said Uncle Tom, looking with a respectful, admiring air, as his young teacher flourishing scrawled Q's and G's, innumerable for his edification, and then taking the pencil in his big heavy fingers, he patiently recommended. "How easy white folks all us does things," said Aunt Chloe, pausing while she was greasing a griddle with a scrap of bacon on her fork, and regarding young Master George with pride. "The way he can write now and read too, and then to come out here evenings and read his lessons to us. It's mighty interestin'." "But Aunt Chloe, I'm getting mightily hungry," said George. "Isn't that cake in the skillet almost done?" "Most done, Master George," said Aunt Chloe, lifting the lid and peeping in, brown and beautiful as a real lovely brown. Let me alone for dat, missus. Let Sally try to make some cake, utter day just to learn her," she said. "Oh, go away, missus," said I. "It really hurts my feelin's. Now to see good vitals spiled that our way. Cake is all to one side, no shape at all, no more than my shoe. Go away." And with a final expression of contempt for Sally's greenness, Aunt Chloe whipped the cover off the baked kettle, and discolored to view a neatly baked pound cake, of which no city confectioner need to have been ashamed. This being evidently the central point of the entertainment, Aunt Chloe began to now bustle about earnestly in the supper department. "Here, you Mose and Pete, get out of the way, you slaves. Get away, Polly, honey. Mammy, give her baby something by and by. Now, Master George, you just take off them boots, set them down out with my old man. I'll take up the sausages, to have the first griddle full of cakes on your plates in less than no time." "They wanted me to come to supper in the house," said George. "But I knew that was what too well for that, Aunt Chloe." So you did, honey," said Aunt Chloe, heaping the smoking battery cakes on his plate. "You know you'd old auntie keep the best for you. I'll let you alone for that. Go away." And with that, auntie gave George a nudge with his finger, designed to immensely facetious, and turned again to her griddle with great briskness. "Now for the cake," said Master George, when the activity of the griddle department had somewhat subsided, and with that the youngster flourished a large knife over the article in question. "La bless you, Master George," said Aunt Chloe with earnestness, catching his arm. "You wouldn't be for cuttin' it with that ar great heavy knife. Smash all down, spile all the pretty rise for it. Here, I've got a thin old knife. I keep sharp a purpose. Dar now, see, comes apart light as a feather. Now eat away. You won't get anything to beat dat ar. Tom Lincoln says," said George, speaking with his mouth full, "that Virginny is a better cook than you." "Them Lincolns aren't much count, no way," said Aunt Chloe contemptuously. "I mean, set alongside our folks, they're 'spectable folks enough in a kinder plain way, but as to getting up anything in style, they don't begin to have a notion on it. Set Master Lincoln now alongside Master Shelby, good lor! Have Mrs. Lincoln, can she kinder sweep into it a room like my missus, so kinder splendid, you know? Oh, go away. Don't tell me nothing of them Lincolns," and Aunt Chloe tossed her head as one who hoped so she did know something of the world. "Well, though I've heard you say," said George, "that Jenny was a pretty fair cook." "So I did," said Aunt Chloe. "I may say dat, good plain common cookin'. Jenny'll do. Make a good pone of bread. Bile her taters, fire her cornflakes. Isn't extra. Not extra now. Jenny's cornflake isn't much, but then they's fire. But lor, come to the higher branches, and what can she do? Why, she can make pies, Satan she doesn't. But what kind of crust? Can she make you really flecky paste as melts in your mouth and lies all up like a puff? Now I went over that when Miss Mary was gwine to be married, and Jenny, she just showed me the wedding pies. Jenny and I is good friends, you know. I never said nothin', but go 'long, Master George. Why, I shouldn't sleep a wink for a week if I had a batch of pies like them are. Why, they want no count at all. I suppose Jenny thought they were ever so nice, said George. Thought so, didn't she? Thar she was, showin' 'em as innocent you say. It's just here Jenny don't know. Lor, if a family ain't nothin', she can't be 'spected to know. 'Tain't no fault o' hern. Ah, Master George, you doesn't know half your privileges in your family and bringin' up. Her Aunt Chloe sighed and rolled up her eyes with emotion. I'm sure, Aunt Chloe, I understand all my pie and puddin' privileges, said George. Ask Tom Lincoln if I don't crow over him every time I meet him. Aunt Chloe sat back in her chair and indulged in a hearty guffaw of laughter at the witticism of young Master's laughing till the tears rolled down her back, shining cheeks, and bearing the exercise of playfully slapping and poking Master George and telling him to go away, that he was a case, that he was fit to kill her, and that he certain would kill her one of these days. And between each of these sanguinity predictions going off into a laugh, each longer and stronger than the other, till George really began to think that he was a very dangerously witty fellow, that it became him to be carefully how he talked as funny as he could. And so ye telled Tom, did ye? Oh, Lor, what young uns will be up here? You crowd over Tom? Oh, Lor, Master George, if you wouldn't make a humbug laugh. Yes, said George. I says to him, Tom, you ought to see some of Aunt Chloe's pies. They're the right sort, says I. Pity, now, Tom couldn't, said Aunt Chloe, on whose benevolent heart the idea of Tom's benighted condition seemed to make a strong impression. You ought to just ask him here to dinner. Some of these times, Master George, she added, it would look quite pretty of ye. You know, Master George, you ought to feel above nobody, or count your privileges, 'cause all our privileges is given to us. We ought always to remember that, said Aunt Chloe, looking quite serious. Well, I mean to ask Tom here some day next week, said George. And you do your prettiest, Aunt Chloe, and we'll make him stare. Won't we make him eat so he won't get over it for a fortnight? Yes, son, said Aunt Chloe, delighted. You'll see. Lord, to think of some of our dinners. You mind that our great chicken pie I made when we give a dinner to General Knox? Aye, missus, we got some pretty near quarrelin' about that our crust. What does get into ladies sometimes I don't know, but sometimes, when a body has the heaviest kind of 'sponsibility on 'em, as ye may say, and is all the kinder serious and takes up, they takes that our time to be hangin' round and kinder interferin'. Now, missus, she wanted me to do this way, and she wanted me to do that way, and finally I got kind of scary, and says, "Ah, now, missus, do just look at them beautiful white hands of yours, with long fingers and all sparklin' with rings, like my white lilies with de dews on dem, and look at my great black stumpin' hands. Now, don't you think that the Lord must have meant me to make a pie crust, and you to stay in the parlor? There, I was just so scary, Master George." "And what did mother say?" said George. "Say? Why, she kinder larfed in her eyes, them great handsome eyes of hern, and says she, well, Aunt Chloe, I think you're about it and the right on it, says she, and she went off in the parlor. She ought to crack me over the head for being so scary, but dar's what it's I can't do nothin' with ladies in the kitchen." "Well, you made out well with that dinner. I remember everybody said so," said George. "Didn't I? And wasn't I behind the dinin'-room door that berry day? And didn't I see the General pass his plate 3 times for some dat berry pie? And says he, 'You must have an uncommon look, Miss Shelby.' Lor, I was fit to split myself. And the General, he knows what cookin' is," said Aunt Chloe, drawing herself up with an air. "Berry nice man, the General. He comes of one of the berry feudest families in old Virginny. He knows what's what, now as well as I do, General. You see these pints and all pies, Master George, 'tain't everybody knows what they is and or ought to be. But the General, he knows. I knew by his marks he made. Yes, he knows what the pints is. By this time, Master George has arrived at the pass to which even a boy can come, when he really could not eat another morsel, and therefore he was at leisure to notice the pile of holy heads and glistening eyes, which were regarding their operations hungrily from the opposite corner. "Here you, Mose Pete," he said, breaking off literal bits and throwing it at them. "You want some, don't you? Come, Aunt Chloe, bake them some cakes." And George and Tom moved to a comfortable seat in the chimney corner, while Aunt Chloe, after baking a goodly pile of cakes, took her baby on her lap and began alternately filling its mouth and her own and distributing to Mose and Pete, who seemed rather to prefer eating pies theirs as they rolled about on the floor under the table, tickling each other and occasionally pulling the baby's toes. "Oh, go long, will ye," said the mother, giving now and then a kick in a kind of general way under the table when the movement became too obstreperous. "Can't ye be decent when white folks comes to see ye? Stop that hour now, will ye? Better mind yourselves, or I'll take you down a buttonhole lower, when Master George is gone." What meaning was couched under this terrible threat, it is difficult to say, but certain it is that his awful indistinctiveness seemed to produce very little impression of the young sinners addressed. "Law, now," said Uncle Tom, "they're so full of tickle all the while, they can't behave theirselves." Here the boys emerged from under the table, and with hands and faces well plastered with molasses, began a vigorous kissing of the baby. "Get along wid ye," said the mother, pushing away their holy heads. "Ye all stick together and never get clear, if ye do dat fashion. Go long to that spring and wash yourselves," she said, seconding her exhortations by a slap which resounded very formidably, but which seemed only to knock out so much more laugh from the young ones as they tumbled precipitately over each other out of doors, where they fairly screamed with merriment. "Did ye ever see such aggravatin' young ones?" said Aunt Chloe rather complacently, as producing an old towel, kept for such emergencies, she poured a little water out of a cracked teapot on it, began rubbing off the molasses from the baby's face and hands, and having polished her till she shone, she sat her down in Tom's lap while she busied herself in clearing away supper. The baby employed the intervals in pulling Tom's nose, scratching his face, and burying her hands in the woolly hair, which last operation seemed to afford her special content. "Ain't she a pert young one?" said Tom, holding her from her to take a full-length view. Then getting up, he set her on his broad shoulder, began capering and dancing with her, while Master George snapped at her with his pocket handkerchief, and Mose and Pete, now returned again, roared after her like bears, till Aunt Chloe declared that they fairly took her head off with their nose. As according to her own statement, the surgical operation was a matter of daily occurrence in the cabin, the declaration no whit abated the merriment till everyone had roared and tumbled and danced themselves down to a state of composure. "Well now, I hopes you done," said Aunt Chloe, who had been busy in pulling out a rude box of turtle bed, "and now you Mose and you Pete get into thar, for we's goin' to have the meetin'." "Oh, mother, we don't want her. We wants to sit up to meetin'. Meetin' is so curious. We likes 'em." "Well, Aunt Chloe, shove it under and let 'em sit up," said Master George, decisively giving a push to the rude machine. Aunt Chloe, having thus saved appearances, seemed highly delighted to push the thing under, saying as she did so, "Well, maybe it'll do 'em some good." The House now resolved itself into a committee of the whole, to consider the accommodations and arrangements for the meeting. "What we's to do for cheers, now I declare I don't know," said Aunt Chloe. As the meeting had been held at Uncle Tom's Weekly for an indefinite length of time, without any more cheers, there seemed some encouragement to hope that a way would be discovered at present. "Old Uncle Peter sung both the legs out of that oldest cheer last week," suggested Mose. "You go long. I'll bound you pulled 'em out. Some of you shine," said Aunt Chloe. "Well, it'll stand if only keeps jam up agin the wall," said Mose. "Then Uncle Peter must been sittin' down, 'cause he always hitches when he gets a singin'. He hitched pretty nigh across the room, other night," said Pete. "Good Lord, he'd get in it, then," said Mose, "and then he'd begin, 'Come saints and sinners, hear me tell,' and then down he'd go, and Mose imitated precisely the nasal tones of the old man, tumbling on the floor to illustrate the supposed catastrophe. "Come now, be decent, can't you?" he said. "Aunt Chloe, ain't you ashamed?" Master George, however, joined the offender in the laugh, and declared decidedly that Mose was a buster, so the maternal admonition seemed rather to fail of effect. "Well, old man," said Chloe, "you'll have to tote him in at ours barrels." "Mother's barrels is like that ar whittlers Master George was reading 'bout in the good book. They never fail," said Mose, aside to Pete. "I'm sure one on 'em caved last week," said Pete, "and let 'em all down in the middle of the singin'. That ar was fallin', wasn't it?" During this aside between Mose and Pete, 2 empty casks had been rolled into the cabin, and being secured from rolling by stones on each side, boards were laid across them, which arranged together with the turning down of certain tubs and pails, and the disposing of rickety chairs, at last completed the preparation. "Master George is such a beautiful reader, and I know he'll stay to read for us," said Aunt Chloe. "'Pears like it will so much more interesting." George very readily consented, for your boy is always ready for anything that makes him of importance. The room was soon filled with a motley assemblage, from the old gray-headed patriarch of 80 to the young girl and lad of 15. A little harmless gossip ensued on various themes, such as where old Aunt Sally got her new red handkerchief, and how Missus was a-goin' to give Lizzie that spotted muslin gown when she'd got her new barrage made up, and how Master Shelby was thinking of buying a new sorrel colt, and was going to prove an addition to the glories of the place. A few of the worshippers belonged to families hard by, who had got permissions to attend, and who brought in various choice scraps of information about the sayings and doings at the house and on the place, which circulated as freely as the same sort of small chance does in higher circles. After a while the singing commenced, to the evident delight of all present. Not even all the disadvantage of nasal intonations could prevent the effect of the naturally fine voices and airs, at once wild and spirited. The words were sometimes the well-known and common hymns sung in the churches about, and sometimes of a wilder, more indefinite character, picked up at camp meetings. The chorus of one of them, which ran as follows, was sung with great energy and unction. "Die on the field of battle, die on the field of battle, glory in my soul." Another special favorite had oft repeated the words, "Oh, I'm going to glory, won't you come along with me? Don't you see the angels beckoning and a-calling me away? Don't you see the golden city and the everlasting day?" There were others which made incessant mention of Jordan's banks and Canaan's fields, the New Jerusalem. For the Negro mind, impassioned and imaginative, always attaches itself to hymns and expressions of a vivid and pictorial nature, and as they sung, some laughed and some cried, and some clapped hands, or shook hands rejoicingly with each other, as if they had fairly gained the other side of a river. Various exhortations or relations of experience followed and intermingled with the singing. One old gray-headed woman, long past work, but much revered as a sort of chronicle of the past, rose, and leaning on her staff, said, "Well, chillun, well, I'm mighty glad to hear ye all and see ye all once more, 'cause I don't know when I'll be gone to glory. But I've done got ready, chillun. 'Pears like I've got my little bundle all tied up, and my bonnet just a-waitin', and for the stage come along and take me home. Sometimes in the night I think I hear the wheels a-rattlin', and I look out all the time. Now you just be ready, too. For I tell ye all, children," she said, striking her staff on the floor, "dat our glory is mighty thing. It's a mighty thing, children. You don't do know nothing about it. It's wonderful." And the old creature sat down with streaming tears, as wholly overcome, while the whole circle struck up. "O Canaan, bright Canaan, I'm bound of the light land of Canaan." Master George, by request, read the last chapters of Revelations, often interrupted by such exclamations as, "Sakes now! Only hear that! Just think of it! It's all that a-comin' sure enough." George, who was a bright boy and well trained in religious things by his mother, finding himself an object of general admiration, threw in expositions of his own. From time to time, with a commendable seriousness and gravity, for which he was admired by the young and blessed by the old, and it was agreed on all hands that a minister couldn't lay it off better than he did. That 'twas really amazin'. Uncle Tom was a sort of patriarch in religious matters in the neighborhood, having naturally an organization in which the morale was strongly predominant, together with a greater breadth and cultivation of mind than obtained among his companions. He was looked up with great respect as a sort of minister among them, and the simple, hearty, and sincere style of his exhortations might have been edified to even better educated persons. But it was in prayer that he especially excelled. Nothing could exceed the touching simplicity, the childlike earnestness of his prayer, enriched with the language of Scripture, which seemed so entirely to have wrought itself into being, as to become a part of himself and to drop from his lips unconsciously in the language of a pious old Negro. He prayed right up, and so much that his prayer always worked on the devotional feelings of his audiences, that there seemed often a danger that it would be lost altogether in the abundance of responses which broke out everywhere around him. While this scene was passing in the cabin of a man, one quite otherwise passed in the halls of a master. The trader and Mr. Shelby were seated together in the dining room aforenamed, a table covered with papers and writing utensils. Mr. Shelby was busy in counting some bundles of bills, which as they were counted he pushed over to the trader, who counted them likewise. "All fair," said the trader, "and now for signing these here." Mr. Shelby hastily drew the bills of sale towards him and signed them, like a man that hurries over some disagreeable business, and then pushed him over with the money. Haley produced from a well-worn valise a parchment, which after looking over it in a moment he handed to Mr. Shelby, who took it with a gesture of suppressed eagerness. "Well now, that thing's done," said the trader, getting up. "It's done," said Mr. Shelby in a musing tone, and fetching a long breath, he repeated, "It's done." "You don't seem to feel much pleased with it, 'pears to me," said the trader. "Haley," said Mr. Shelby, "I hope you'll remember that you promised on your honor. You wouldn't sell Tom without knowing what sort of hands he's going into." "Why, you've just done it, sir," said the trader. "Circumstances, you well know, oblige me," said Shelby haughtily. "Well, you know, they may be 'blige me, too," said the trader. "However, I'll do the very best I can in gettin' Tom a good breath. As to my treatin' on him bad, you needn't be a grain afeard. If there's anything that I thank the Lord for, it is that I'm never now away cruel." After the expositions which the trader had previously given of his humane principles, Mr. Shelby did not feel particularly reassured by these declarations, but as they were the best comfort the case admitted of, he allowed the trader to depart in silence and betook himself to a solitary cigar.